Okay, let's unpack this. You know that feeling when you're caught in that relentless procrastination loop? Staring down a deadline for something genuinely important, and then suddenly reorganizing your sock drawer feels like a top-tier priority.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe diving into the fascinating yet utterly irrelevant history of paperclips becomes an urgent, undeniable need.
Getting there.
We've all been there, haven't we? That moment where a seemingly simple but perhaps uncomfortable task transforms into this monumental mental roadblock. It's not just annoying. It can be a real drag on our goals, our productivity, and frankly, our overall well-being. Today, we're going to dive deep into that all too familiar experience.
Indeed. And what's truly fascinating here, and a point that your sources really emphasize, is that procrastination isn't just about laziness.
Right, that's what most people think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not a simple lack of willpower, which is often the popular misconception. It's actually a far more complex phenomenon, sort of interwoven with deep psychological and even neurological roots.
Urological, too. Interesting.
Yeah. So today we're taking a deep dive into the material you've provided to truly unpack what procrastination is, why it happens, and most importantly, how we can effectively move beyond it.
Okay.
We'll explore some cutting-edge research, practical, actionable strategies, and some powerful frameworks to help you regain control and, significantly boost your productivity.
And to do that, we've pulled from a fantastic, really comprehensive stack of sources. We've got everything from rigorous scientific studies on emotion regulation and brain chemistry,
The hard science.
all the way to incredibly practical guides and real-world experiences from people who've navigated this challenge.
Yeah, that practical side is key.
Our mission, as always, is to extract those most important nuggets of knowledge and maybe some surprising facts so that you can walk away from this deep dive feeling truly well-informed.
And hopefully empowered.
Exactly. And perhaps, with a newfound sense of understanding and readiness to tackle that long-dreaded to-do list.
Let's hope so.
So let's start by really defining this pervasive problem. What exactly is procrastination, and why does it trip so many of us up, even when we, know better?
Right.
The research we've looked at for you really emphasizes that it's more than just simply putting something off.
It's definitely more nuanced than that.
It's explicitly described as the intentional act of delaying tasks, actions, and decisions, even when, with absolute certainty in your gut that it will lead to negative consequences later.
Think about that. Intentional delay despite knowing it's bad.
Yeah. You know it's going to be detrimental, but you still do it anyway. It's a voluntary and irrational delay of an intended action, despite anticipating being worse off because of the delay.
And the term itself is actually quite telling, isn't it? It comes from Latin roots pro, meaning in favor of or forward, and crassinus, which translates to of tomorrow.
Of tomorrow.
Exactly. So at its core, you're literally putting something off in favor of tomorrow.
Yeah.
It paints a vivid picture, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's almost as if procrastinators are living by what your sources call the tomorrow will be different fallacy.
Right. I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow me is better.
Precisely. Operating under the optimistic, if, let's be honest, misguided belief that we will be different tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's this pervasive, comforting, yet ultimately self-defeating notion that a future version of ourselves will magically be more energized, more focused, and just, better equipped to handle the task at hand.
It's such a seductive illusion, though.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it keeps us stuck in that cycle.
That tomorrow will be different fallacy hits home for so many of us. We tell ourselves, oh, I'll be more motivated tomorrow, or, I'll have more time next week. But what makes us so convinced that we'll suddenly transform into these productive superheroes overnight?
Yeah. The superhero version of ourselves.
Especially after countless past failures where tomorrow just became the day after tomorrow, then the day after that. Is it just blind optimism, or is there something deeper at play in our psychology? Like, why this recurring self-deception?
Well, it's rarely just blind optimism. It's more like a cognitive distortion, really, tied to how we perceive our future selves.
Okay.
We tend to see our future self almost as a different person, someone else who will handle the discomfort or the difficulty of the task.
So passing the buck to future me.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
It allows our present self to escape that discomfort, that anxiety, that boredom, whatever the negative feeling is. It's a way for our current self to offload the emotional burden.
That makes a lot of sense.
And when we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes clear that this isn't some minor isolated issue affecting just a few people.
No, it feels pretty universal sometimes.
Well, the research shows it's incredibly widespread. It impacts far more people than you might initially think. The numbers from your sources are quite striking, actually. They really underscore its prevalence.
Okay, let's hear them.
For instance, approximately 15–20% of the total adult population suffers from chronic procrastination.
Chronic. Like all the time.
Yeah, consistently struggling with this behavior, not just the occasional slip-up. That's a significant chunk of adults.
Wow.
And almost universally, over 95% of adults wish they could minimize their procrastination habits.
So nearly everyone wants to stop, but many can't.
Exactly. It illustrates this profound shared desire for change, yet the behavior stubbornly persists for many. And among students, the prevalence is even higher.
Oh, I bet. School deadlines.
Right. It's particularly concerning given the direct impact on their development, academic success, future careers. Estimates show that a staggering 80–95% of students engage in occasional procrastination.
80 to 95%. So basically everyone.
Pretty much everyone experiences it to some degree in education, and about 50% suffer from chronic, detrimental procrastination behavior. That's half of students really struggling.
Half. Wow, those numbers truly are eye-opening. It really highlights how pervasive this is, especially in academic settings where the stakes can feel incredibly high. It does make you realize, though, if you're struggling with this, you are absolutely not alone.
Absolutely not. And the harmful effects, they extend far beyond just missing a deadline or getting a lower grade.
Right, it's not just about the task itself.
Not at all. They touch almost every aspect of life, creating this kind of ripple effect. Professionally and academically, chronic procrastination, well, predictably leads to reduced quality of work, lower grades.
Makes sense.
And there's strong evidence for that. A comprehensive 2015 meta-analytic review, basically a study of studies, looked at 33 different studies involving nearly 40,000 participants.
40,000.
Yeah, and it unequivocally confirmed a high negative correlation between procrastination and academic performance.
So the more you procrastinate, the worse you do, generally.
Generally, yes. It also results in low learning and progress levels, essentially hindering personal and professional growth over the long term.
Okay, so academics and work suffer. What else?
Socially and personally, the impact is equally profound. It can lead to a decrease in trust from others, especially if you're working in a team.
Yeah, letting people down.
Exactly. It can disturb personal and professional relationships due to unmet commitments. Internally, there's often a significant amount of self-blame, guilt,
Guilt is awful.
and that nagging mental pressure that lingers until a work is done or sometimes even after a deadline has passed unfulfilled. Over time, this constant internal battle just chips away at your self-belief and self-worth.
That sounds really damaging long term.
It can be. And perhaps most critically, procrastination is a significant vulnerability factor for health problems.
Health problems, how so?
It's directly linked to increased stress, chronic sleep deprivation.
Because you're staying up late finishing things.
Often, yes, or just worrying about them. And it's even linked to an elevated risk of depression. It often acts via these stress-related and behavioral routes. So you can see it's far from a minor annoyance. It's a serious impediment to overall well-being and productivity.
Okay, so it's widespread, it's harmful academically, socially, personally, even physically. If we know it's so bad for us, leading to all these negative consequences, why on earth do we keep doing it? This is where it gets really interesting, right? Looking at the different psychological theories, trying to explain this stubborn, self-defeating behavior.
Exactly. The why is fascinating. And the early perspectives offered some really foundational insights.
Like what? What were some of the first ideas?
Well, one of the earliest views comes from the psychoanalytic or psychodynamic approach. This has its roots way back in Freud's work, early 20th century.
Okay, Freud. What did he think?
This perspective suggests that procrastination stems from avoiding tasks that pose a threat to the ego.
Threat to the ego, like feeling inadequate.
Sort of. Think of it as your subconscious trying to protect you from something it perceives as dangerous to your self-image, your competence, or your sense of self-worth. Anxiety, in this view, acts as a warning sign, a signal from your inner world that this task is threatening somehow.
So I avoid the task to avoid feeling bad about myself.
That's the gist of it from this perspective. The sources also mention it can sometimes be a representation of earlier issues, like childhood traumas or maybe parenting problems.
How would parenting play into it?
Well, for example, maybe having unrealistic goals set by parents, or conditional affection where love was only given if certain achievements were met. That could lead to a deep-seated fear of failure, or a constant need for external validation.
Right, so you avoid the task to avoid judgment.
Exactly. Or even overly permissive or overly authoritative parenting styles could inadvertently lead to underachievement or rebellion, which might manifest as chronic procrastination.
Interesting. And what else did this approach say?
It suggested procrastinators tend to be very present-oriented. They struggle to truly anticipate or fully internalize the future impact of their delays. It's almost like the immediate discomfort of the present task feels much more real and pressing than any potential future negative consequence.
Okay, so that's the psychodynamic view. What other early theories were there?
Then we shift gears to the behavioristic approach. This one argues something quite different, that procrastination is actually a learned behavior.
Learn it. How?
Developed through repeated success, you could say, in delaying. It's essentially a response shaped by avoiding unpleasant stimuli.
So if I put something off and it works out okay, I learn to do it again.
Pretty much. It's like your brain thinks, hey, that last-minute scramble worked out fine, I got away with it, so why not do it again? According to classical learning theory, behaviors can occur automatically through reinforcement, getting a reward, or lack of punishment.
So the reward is avoiding the unpleasant task for a bit.
Exactly. Or maybe remembering those successful last-minute completions. That reinforces the delaying behavior. This approach also describes things like escape conditioning.
Escape conditioning.
Yeah, where you start a task but then stop, fostering a habit of quitting before completion.
More.
Or avoidance conditioning, where you make extraordinary efforts to avoid tasks altogether, sometimes spending more energy avoiding than actually doing.
Huh. I think I've done that. So what about rewards in this theory?
A really insightful idea within the behavioristic approach is Ainsley's 1975 specious rewards theory.
Specious, meaning false.
Yes, seemingly good but false. This theory suggests that humans have this natural tendency to choose short-term gratification over long-term goals. We're kind of wired for the immediate payoff.
Okay.
For procrastinators, they become conditioned to choose that immediate pleasure, that quick hit of relief from avoiding the task, which leads to a vicious cycle that ironically increases task anxiety in the long run.
So the relief is the specious reward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though it sets them up for greater stress later, the immediate relief feels good now.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Psychoanalytic, behavioristic. What else?
Finally, within these early perspectives, there's the cognitive approach, which zeroes in on our thought processes, our thinking patterns.
All right, so what are the thoughts that lead to procrastination?
This perspective highlights how irrational beliefs can powerfully drive it. For example, someone might hold the belief, I have to do something perfect, and maybe that it must be appreciated by everyone.
Ah, perfectionism.
Right. This perfectionism can lead to delaying work indefinitely for fear of failure, because, well, if you don't start, you can't fail, right?
Clever, but not helpful.
Not at all. Or if you delay until the last minute and the outcome isn't great, you can then attribute any failure to lack of time or idleness rather than your own inability.
So it protects your ego, in a way.
Exactly. It's a clever mental maneuver that helps protect a vulnerable self-esteem. Delaying tasks also conveniently delays the assessment of one's ability.
Any other cognitive factors?
Yeah, this approach also views procrastination sometimes as a kind of coping disorder for difficult decisions. It's marked by a pervasive pessimism about finding satisfactory solutions. So it's not just about avoiding the task, but avoiding the decision itself, maybe because you're convinced no truly good outcome exists.
Wow, okay. So lots of different angles from these early theories. Fear of failure, learned habits, irrational thoughts.
Exactly. Each offers a piece of the puzzle. But it also raises an important question. How do these older, distinct theories connect? Is there a more unified, comprehensive explanation that brings them all together?
Yeah, is there one big theory?
Well, this is where the Temporal Motivation Theory, or TMT, enters the picture. TMT, notably proposed by Piers Steel back in 2007, is considered a highly comprehensive and more recent theory.
Okay, TMT, temporal motivation, sounds like it involves time.
It does. It's rooted in something called pico-economics, or maybe more intuitively, hyperbolic discounting.
Hyperbolic discounting. Okay, break that down.
Don't let the terms intimidate you. The core idea is quite intuitive, actually. Think of it like this. Hyperbolic discounting is the tendency we all have to value things less if they're far off in the future.
Like money later isn't as good as money now.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Imagine being offered, say, $10 right now versus $20 a year from now. Logically, $20 is better.
Yeah, obviously.
But for many people, the immediate gratification of that $10 now feels more compelling, more motivating.
Right. I want it now.
That's hyperbolic discounting in action. And TMT builds on this. It suggests that people prioritize activities that promise the highest utility, essentially, the most perceived benefit or satisfaction at that specific moment in time.
So we do what feels most rewarding right now.
That's the core idea.
Mm.
And the brilliance of TMT is captured in a surprisingly straightforward formula. Are you ready for it?
Lay it on me.
Okay. Utility, expectancy X value. Sensitivity to delay X time delay.
Okay. Utility, expectancy X value, sensitivity to delay X time delay. Let's unpack that.
Let's break down each component because understanding them is really crucial to understanding why we delay. First, up top, we have expectancy.
Expectancy, like, do I expect to succeed?
Exactly. It's your perceived probability of success for a given task. This directly reflects your self-efficacy, your belief in your own ability to succeed, and also ties into your self-esteem. So if the directions for a project are unclear, for example, your expectancy might plummet, making you less likely to even start.
Makes sense. If I don't think I can do it, why bother? What's value?
Value is the other part of the numerator. It relates to your preferences toward an activity, how desirable, enjoyable, or inherently rewarding it is to you.
So how much do I actually want to do it or want the outcome?
Precisely. This encompasses factors like how aversive or unpleasant the task feels, your underlying need for achievement, maybe even your proneness to boredom. If the incentives for a task are low, or if the task just feels unattractive or boring, its value is low, which initiates postponement.
Okay, expectancy times value on top. What about the bottom? Sensitivity to delay.
Right, the denominator. Sensitivity to delay. This refers to your inclination towards short-term rewards. Essentially, it's a measure of your impulsivity.
So how easily distracted am I by something fun right now?
That's a good way to put it. People who are highly sensitive to delay are more easily diverted to more pleasant, immediately gratifying stimuli in the present moment. They find it harder to resist that instant gratification of checking their phone or grabbing a snack.
Okay, I know that feeling. And the last part, time delay.
Time delay. This simply represents the duration until you obtain the results or rewards of your efforts.
How far off is the payoff?
Exactly. And as we discussed with hyperbolic discounting, people naturally tend to discount future rewards, value them less if they're far off, and conversely, they tend to overestimate the enjoyment of things they can do right now.
So the further away the deadline or reward, the bigger the time delay number and the lower the overall utility of doing the task now.
You got it. Deadlines, in this context, serve as a crucial external self-management mechanism. They effectively reduce the time delay as they get closer, making the consequences of further delay more immediate and boosting the task's current utility. They negate that natural tendency to postpone.
That formula is powerful for understanding the mechanics. It really synthesizes a lot of what we've already heard about self-belief, task value, impulsivity, time. But let's take a common scenario. Someone has a high expectancy. They know they can do the task, and they also know it has high value. It's important for their career or grades. But the time delay is long, say a project due in 3 months. How do they combat that inherent sensitivity to delay, that immediate urge to pick something easier or more pleasurable right now? What practical insights does TMT offer for that specific trap?
That's a critical question, and absolutely it's where the rubber meets the road, isn't it?
Yeah.
TMT implies that to combat high sensitivity to delay when the time delay is long, you basically need to manipulate the other variables in the equation.
Yeah.
You need to either increase the numerator expectancy and value or somehow decrease the impact of sensitivity to delay and time delay of the denominator.
Okay.
Practically, this means making the long-term reward feel more immediate or making the task itself less aversive or more valuable right now. For instance, breaking that big 3-month project into tiny, immediate, rewarding steps.
Chunking it down.
Exactly. Chunking it down makes the time delay feel shorter for each mini task. You get a little sense of accomplishment, maybe a small reward, much sooner. This effectively short-circuits the impulsivity drive because you're getting payoffs along the way.
So you're reducing the time delay for smaller parts of the task.
Precisely. Or you could focus on increasing the value component now, finding ways to make the task inherently more interesting or intrinsically valuable, even in small ways, maybe linking it to a personal interest, working with a friend, gamifying it somehow. This increases its perceived value in the present moment, making it more appealing compared to the immediate distraction.
Got it. Make the task itself better or the rewards feel closer.
That's the essence of it. However, while TMT is incredibly powerful for explaining everyday procrastination, it's fair to mention it does face some critiques.
Like what? Where does it fall short?
Well, it struggles, for example, to fully explain scenarios where individuals pursue what seem like low utility, long-term, and often profoundly painful goals.
Low utility, like what?
Think of a freedom fighter enduring immense suffering for a distant, uncertain goal like independence. Or the selfless dedication of someone like Mother Teresa, who committed their life to helping others without obvious immediate personal gain, according to this formula.
Right, the immediate utility seems low there.
Exactly. By the strict TMT formula, the immediate utility might seem very low, yet people pursue these paths with immense dedication. This suggests they're driven by something perhaps beyond immediate gratification, as defined by the formula, maybe deeply held values, a sense of purpose, and unwavering long-term vision.
So it highlights the element of subjectivity in assessing utility. What's valuable isn't always easily plugged into a formula.
That's a great way to put it. But the key insight TMT provides, and this is where it truly clicks for most of us dealing with everyday procrastination, is that procrastination is ultimately considered an irrational delay.
Irrational because...
It's irrational precisely because the procrastinator knows, or at least strongly suspects, that the delay will likely produce worse results, yet they consciously choose activities with higher short-term but lower long-term utility.
Yeah.
It's that choice against one's better judgment that TMT really zeroes in on.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's choosing the immediate relief even when you know it's going to bite you later. So it seems a lot of it boils down to what we expect, what we value, how impulsive we are, and how we perceive time. But what about our feelings? The common phrase, "I'll worry about it tomorrow," really hints at a strong emotional component, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like we're trying to postpone not just the task, but the negative emotions associated with it. Is that accurate?
That's spot on. And this is a really crucial piece of the puzzle that modern research emphasizes. What's fascinating here is how procrastination very often functions as a dysfunctional emotion regulation strategy.
Dysfunctional emotion regulation, meaning a bad way to cope with feelings.
Exactly. It's not just about avoiding the task itself, but it seems deeply rooted in attempts to manage or simply avoid the aversive emotions that a task might trigger.
Like what kind of emotions?
Oh, anything from frustration and boredom to overwhelming anxiety, fear of failure, resentment, self-doubt, or even just general worry. Procrastination, in this light, offers a kind of short-term mood repair.
A quick fix for feeling bad.
Precisely. By delaying, individuals temporarily escape or avoid these unpleasant feelings, gaining immediate relief. But as we've already seen, this comes at the significant cost of their long-term goals and overall well-being. It's that classic case of sacrificing the future for momentary comfort.
Okay, so how does this emotion regulation idea work? Is there a model for it?
Yes, this connection is very well explained by Gross's process model of emotion regulation. This model basically outlines that emotion regulation involves actively monitoring, evaluating, and modifying our emotional reactions to achieve our goals.
Okay, monitoring, evaluating, modifying.
And it identifies various strategies individuals use. For instance, one key strategy is attention deployment, essentially, where you choose to put your mental focus.
Ah, like choosing to focus on social media instead of the report.
Exactly. When it comes to procrastination, engaging in certain emotion regulation strategies becomes dysfunctional if it involves downregulating or lessening those aversive emotions at the expense of our previously formed intentions and goals. So if a task makes you anxious, you might deploy your attention away from it towards something less anxiety-inducing, like scrolling social media. This is an immediate, albeit maladaptive way to feel better now.
Right, but it doesn't solve the underlying problem. So how do we cope better?
To effectively combat this, building adaptive coping with emotions, or ACE skills, is absolutely crucial. The ACE model outlines 9 specific vital skills for healthy emotional regulation, which your sources highlight as key.
9 skills. Okay, let's hear them.
All right, let's break them down. First, awareness of one's emotions. This is the absolute prerequisite. You can't regulate what you don't recognize or acknowledge.
Gotta know what you're feeling.
Second, identifying and correctly labeling emotions. Naming what you feel like, this isn't just bad, it's anxiety about starting, actually facilitates managing them.
Putting a name to it, okay.
Third, correctly interpreting emotions related to bodily sensations. Understanding why your heart is racing or your stomach is churning helps avoid misinterpretations that can spiral into more distress.
So linking the physical feeling to the emotion.
Fourth, understanding the cause of emotions. Recognizing why you feel frustrated or anxious about a task gives you an opportunity for change, rather than just reacting blindly.
Find the trigger. Makes sense.
Fifth, Adaptively modifying aversive emotions. Learning techniques, maybe deep breathing, maybe reframing to shift your emotional state even slightly, can enhance your state and build self-efficacy.
Okay, actively trying to feel a bit better.
Sixth, accepting one's emotions. This is really key. Non-acceptance or fighting your emotions often just fuels further negative emotions and makes them more intense. Sometimes you just need to allow the feeling to be there.
So not fighting the anxiety, but accepting it's there.
Seventh, resilience. This means tolerating and accepting aversive emotions when they arise, rather than immediately giving in to dysfunctional control efforts like procrastination. Building tolerance for discomfort.
Sitting with the discomfort.
Okay. Eighth, emotionally supporting oneself in distressing situations. Basically, being kind and understanding to yourself as you would be to a friend going through something tough. This helps avoid impulsive mood repair behaviors like procrastination.
Self-compassion, important.
And ninth, confronting distressing situations. Actively facing those uncomfortable situations, even in small steps, is how you acquire effective emotion regulation competencies and build resilience over time. You learn you can handle it.
Okay, those 9 skills sound incredibly useful, not just for procrastination, but for life in general. Is there proof this works?
Yes, the empirical evidence for this connection is quite compelling. Your sources highlight a specific randomized controlled trial, RCT, involving 148 university students.
An RCT, so pretty solid research design.
Exactly.
Right.
Participants were randomly assigned to either an intervention group that got ER training or a control group that didn't. And the study showed remarkable results.
What happened?
A 9-week online emotion regulation ER training significantly increased general ER skills among the intervention group.
Okay, they got better at managing emotions.
And, crucially, it significantly reduced their procrastination behavior compared to the control group.
Wow. So learning these skills directly reduced procrastination.
Yes. And what's even more telling is that the reduction in procrastination was directly mediated by the increase in general ER skills.
Mediated, meaning?
It means that it wasn't just that people procrastinated less after the training, but that they procrastinated less because their general ER skills improved. The skills were the mechanism of change.
That's powerful evidence. What kind of training did they do?
The training itself focused on a range of techniques, things like mindfulness, relaxation exercises, cultivating positive emotions, behavioral activation, which is about doing things even when you don't feel like it, self-esteem building, and cognitive modification, changing thought patterns.
So a broad toolkit.
That's right. And this study strongly suggests that enhancing these general, non-task-specific ER skills can significantly reduce procrastination. It equips you with better tools to manage the uncomfortable emotions that often trigger the delay in the first place. It teaches you to, as you said, sit with the discomfort instead of running from it.
That's truly fascinating. So it's not about avoiding the emotion that a difficult task might bring, but about learning to deal with it effectively so it doesn't derail you. That's a huge shift in perspective.
It really is.
And this connects to something you might have seen online or heard about, what's often referred to as a dopamine hack for procrastination. Our sources discuss this in the context of neuroscience, and it's a surprisingly direct way our brain chemistry plays a role here.
Ah, yes, the dopamine connection.
Procrastination often occurs when we sort of feel busy with less important tasks just to get those quick hits of dopamine.
Right, the reward chemical.
Dopamine is that crucial neurotransmitter in our brains, responsible for motivation, reward, focus, the whole shebang. When you're working on a boring, unstimulating task, your brain's dopamine levels are likely pretty low. And since dopamine also influences our perception of time.
Oh, interesting. How?
Well, when dopamine is low, time can seem to slow down. That's why you might find yourself constantly checking the clock, feeling like the task is just endless.
Ah, that makes sense. That feeling of time dragging.
Exactly. So you naturally seek instant gratification scrolling on your phone, grabbing snacks, tackling other much easier to-dos, because these quick activities provide a small, immediate hit of dopamine, a fleeting sense of accomplishment or pleasure.
The quick fix again.
But here's the catch, and this is key. Your body wants to restore balance. Homeostasis. After that dopamine hit, that pleasure, you'll often experience a dopamine low.
The crash after the high.
Pretty much. Which can manifest as cravings, demotivation, restlessness, maybe feeling sluggish. It creates this vicious cycle where you seek more quick hits, further depleting your baseline dopamine level needed for sustained effort on the important stuff.
So chasing dopamine makes it harder to focus long term.
That seems to be the idea. Now, the counterintuitive strategy proposed to turn it around Makes a lot of sense from this neuroscience perspective.
Okay, what's the strategy?
Before you start working on your actual important task, do something that sucks.
Do something that sucks. Like what?
Something that is even more painful, uncomfortable, or boring than the work itself. Our sources suggest things like maybe doing 30 burpees, taking an ice-cold shower.
Well, cold shower.
Yeah, or even just staring at a blank wall for 5 minutes and doing absolutely nothing.
Why on earth would you do that?
Because when you intentionally seek out pain or discomfort first, your body again tries to restore its internal balance. This is thought to cause your brain to naturally raise your baseline dopamine levels.
So the pain triggers a dopamine rebound.
That's the hypothesis. It gives you more focus and motivation for your actual important task, which now seems less painful by comparison.
Huh. Is there evidence for this?
Well, a study from 2000 by Ramek and colleagues, for instance, found that cold showers significantly increased dopamine levels by 2.5 times.
2.5 times. Wow.
And the effect lasted up to 3 hours, leading to increased focus and calm. Even the idea of just doing nothing for a few minutes can be surprisingly hard in our constantly stimulated world.
True. Just sitting still is tough.
So doing that first can be an effective way to reset your brain and prime it for focused work. It's about kind of front-loading the discomfort to unlock a surge of motivation for what truly matters.
Interesting. Pain first, dopamine later. A very different approach.
Definitely counterintuitive, but maybe worth a try.
Now that we've journeyed through the deep psychological and neurological underpinnings of procrastination, really understanding why we get stuck, it raises the crucial practical question for you listening.
Yeah.
What can you actually do to overcome it?
Right, the practical stuff. Let's get into the strategies.
Your sources provide a real wealth of practical, actionable strategies that we can break down into clear, implementable steps you can start applying, today.
Okay, step 1.
First, and this is absolutely fundamental, you need to gain absolute clarity on your tasks. This might sound simple, maybe even too obvious.
Like make a list.
Exactly. But it's often the first step that's overlooked or done superficially. You need to consistently write a to-do list. This can be for the day, the week, the month, even longer, whatever makes sense for your goals.
Okay, list done. Then what?
Then you must prioritize it. Ideally, numbering tasks from most important to least important. And a really crucial step, especially for those daunting tasks, is to grade or break down large, overwhelming tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Chunking again. Seems important.
It really is. This prevents that feeling of being completely swamped and paralyzed, which so often triggers procrastination. And finally, try to accurately estimate how much time each step will take.
The time estimation trap.
Exactly. Procrastinators often either wildly overestimate how long a task will take, making it seem too big to start, or wildly underestimate, leading to those rushed, stressful finishes. Practicing timing tasks will help you get more accurate and build confidence.
Okay, clarity, prioritizing, chunking, estimating time. What's next?
Second, employ SMART goals. This framework is incredibly powerful for structured goal setting and motivation because it brings clarity and direction to your efforts.
SMART goals. I've heard of these. Specific, measurable.
That's right. SMART stands for S, specific. Your goal needs to be clearly defined. What exactly do you want to achieve, and precisely how will you get there? The more effort you put into defining it, the better.
Okay, be specific.
M, measurable. You must be able to quantify your results over time. How will you track progress? How will you know if you've achieved it? This helps identify obstacles too.
Trackable progress. Got it.
A, attainable. Realize that starting small is absolutely fine, even encouraged. Breaking goals down into manageable steps pushes you closer. And crucially, remember to celebrate progress, no matter how small. Keep the motivation up.
Make it achievable, celebrate wins. Yes.
Are relevant. Your goals should deeply align with your core values. Why does this matter to you? This intrinsic inspiration and guidance will keep you on track, even when things get tough.
Connect it to what you care about.
Right.
And tea time based. Set strict short-term and long-term timelines. Success isn't usually an overnight thing. It's a process of dedication that must be nurtured over time, and deadlines provide that essential structure.
Set deadlines. Okay, SMART. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based. That framework is incredibly robust. It turns a vague desire like procrastinate less into an actionable plan. Our sources provide a fantastic array of SMART goal examples, really illustrating how to apply this. Maybe we can dig into a few key examples. Absolutely. Let's consider a common challenge. Breaking down large tasks, like we just mentioned. A great SMART goal might be something like I will break down my major research paper into daily 30-minute writing chunks, completing one chunk each day for the next month to ensure consistent progress and prevent feeling overwhelmed. Okay, let's check. Specific, daily 30-minute chunks, measurable, one chunk daily,
Yeah.
attainable, just 30 minutes, relevant, completes paper, time-based, next month. Yep, smart. Exactly. It transforms a massive project into bite-sized, digestible daily wins. Or perhaps, if you struggle with distractions, a smart goal for changing your environment could be: I will reduce my procrastination triggers by installing a website blocker on my computer for distracting social media sites for 2 hours during my peak work time daily, starting next Monday and continuing for 3 weeks.
Specific, blocker sites, time. Measurable, 2 hours daily, 3 weeks. Attainable, install software. Relevant, reduces triggers. Time-based, starts Monday, 3 weeks. Checks out again.
Right. Another powerful one involves accountability. Many people find external pressure helpful. So a smart goal here might be: I will find a peer or mentor who can help me stay on track by the end of next month, setting up weekly 15-minute check-ins via video call to discuss progress on my main project.
Specific, peer mentor, weekly check-ins, video call. Measurable, having the check-ins. Attainable, reaching out. Relevant, accountability. Time-based, end of next month. Perfect. The key is applying the SMART framework to your specific situation, and yeah, the sources offer many more variations.
Okay, third big strategy area. Optimize your approach to tasks. How you initially engage with a task can make all the difference.
Like how you start.
Exactly. One popular method is worst first, sometimes called eat the frog.
Eat the frog sounds unpleasant.
Huh? It kind of is, but that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
The strategy is simple. Tackle the most unpleasant or difficult task first thing in your day. Once it's done, everything else feels easier by comparison, and you carry this huge sense of accomplishment with you. Mark Twain famously said something like, if it's your job to eat a frog, do it first thing. If you have to eat two, eat the biggest one first.
Get the worst over with. I like it. What else?
Another approach is using momentum. This is about leveraging positive energy. Start with an energizing, enjoyable, or easy task to get yourself into a flow state. Once you're feeling productive and focused, quickly switch to a task you've been avoiding. The momentum from the easy task can help carry you through the harder one.
So warm up with something easy, then tackle a beast.
Kinda, yeah. Then there's the just 5 minutes technique. This is surprisingly powerful for really daunting tasks.
Only 5 minutes.
Commit to only 5 minutes. Tell yourself, I just have to work on this for 5 minutes. Often the inertia, the resistance to starting, is the hardest part. After those 5 minutes, reassess. You'll often find you've broken through the mental block and you just keep going.
Lower the barrier to entry. Nice.
And finally, set time limits. Work on a task for a specific limited time, say 30 minutes, using something like the Pomodoro technique, and stick to it rigidly. Work intensely for that short burst, then take a planned break. This prevents burnout and makes the task feel less overwhelming and endless.
Work in focus bursts. Okay, good tactical approaches. What about the bigger picture, like environment and time?
Great point. That's the fourth area. Manage your environment and time effectively. Your surroundings and how you schedule your day profoundly impact your ability to avoid procrastination.
So controlling distractions.
Absolutely. Identify your prime time place, your most productive times of day, and the environments where you focus best. Then, be ruthless about minimizing distractions during those periods. Put the phone away, use website blockers, find a quiet spot.
Protect your peak focus time.
Yes. Another simple tactic is remember then do. This is about capturing the impulse. When you remember a task, especially a small one, act immediately if possible. Don't give yourself time to deliberate or find an excuse. Just do it.
Seize the moment. I like that.
Use reminders. Visual prompts are key sticky notes. Physical lists, calendar alerts, phone reminders keep tasks front of mind. Out of sight, out of mind is a common trap.
Make it visible. Good tip.
If you feel unsettled or overwhelmed, take a moment to focus. Your sources suggest 5–10 minutes for slow breathing exercises. This can help settle your mind and refocus before returning to the task.
Resetting with breath. Okay.
Don't forget to plan rewards. Strategically reward yourself for achievements or during well-earned breaks. This reduces feelings of deprivation and lessens the urge to procrastinate for that instant gratification. Make it something you genuinely look forward to.
Reward yourself for good work. Yes.
Finally, consider timetabling. Use either structured scheduling, blocking out specific tasks at specific times, or maybe flexible unscheduling marking blocks of free time, and then tracking work in 30-minute increments within those flexible blocks. Both methods aim to make your time tangible and accountable.
Scheduling or unscheduling?
Yeah.
Interesting options. Okay, those are great practical steps. Are there broader strategies from the research?
Yes, broadening our view, research also points to some deeper, more systemic strategies.
Yeah.
First, improve self-efficacy. We touched on this with TMT. Our sources highlight a significant negative correlation between procrastination and self-efficacy, your belief in your ability to succeed. Increasing this belief, maybe through mastering small skills, getting positive feedback, or even positive self-talk, is a crucial internal step. If you truly believe you can do it, you're far more likely to start.
Build that I can do this muscle.
Exactly. Second, conscious training, especially early on. Educational settings have a powerful role here. They can provide cognitive, emotional, and behavioral training from an early age, focusing on effective learning strategies, time management skills, and a deeper understanding of the downsides of procrastination. Teaching these skills early can build strong foundations.
So, teaching anti-procrastination skills in schools.
Ideally, yes. Third, and this is more complex, improve societal structure norms and parental upbringing. The research suggests that environments that lack clear rules or expectations might inadvertently foster procrastination. Conversely, a consistent pattern of rules and teaching self-responsibility from childhood can help reduce it. It's not about blame, but understanding those environmental influences.
Structure and responsibility matter.
And finally, alter faulty thoughts cognitive dissonance. This ties back directly to the cognitive approach and CBT. Actively addressing and challenging the underlying irrational thought processes, the perfectionism, the fear of failure, the low frustration tolerance that contribute to procrastination, is vital. When your thoughts align better with your goals, action becomes easier.
Challenge those negative thought patterns.
Right.
That's a truly comprehensive toolkit right there. It's clear that overcoming procrastination isn't a simple one-size-fits-all solution, but really a multi-pronged approach. It draws from such a deep understanding of psychological principles. This is a lot of information, though, but it does seem to point towards a powerful combination of approaches. Let's try to bring it all together now, maybe looking at it through the lens of behavioral and cognitive psychology. You mentioned CBT earlier.
Absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a really powerful synergy between cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and operant conditioning. These can be particularly effective in tackling procrastination when applied thoughtfully together.
Okay, CBT and operant conditioning. Let's start with CBT. How does that help specifically?
Okay, so cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Its origins, as mentioned, lie with Aaron Beck. He observed that patients, particularly those with depression, frequently had these automatic thoughts, often negative or distorted biases that were directly connected to their actions and behaviors.
Those instant negative reactions or beliefs?
Exactly. And the core principle of CBT is to identify and correct unwanted behaviors by examining the interconnectedness of our behaviors, thoughts, and feelings. The theory suggests that if you perceive a stimulus like a task as harmful or threatening, perhaps due to these cognitive biases or mental shortcuts, your response, like avoidance, is likely to be negative.
So the thought triggers the feeling, which triggers the behavior.
You got it. So academic procrastination, for example, is often seen in CBT as a learned response aimed at removing these harmful the challenging or anxiety-inducing tasks. They're deemed harmful because of those automatic, often distorted thoughts. The brain, in this scenario, prioritizes the short-term pleasure or relief of avoidance over the long-term goals.
Okay, so CBT helps you spot those thoughts.
Precisely. CBT helps us identify what your sources call the procrastination loop. You encounter a situation, say, needing to write a report. This immediately triggers an automatic thought like, this is too hard, or I'll fail, or maybe even checking social media is more fun and easier right now. This thought leads directly to distraction, picking up your phone. And finally, procrastination, delaying the report.
Situation, thought, distraction, procrastination. Got it.
And the entire focus of CBT in this context is on modifying those automatic thoughts. By recognizing and challenging thoughts like social media is more pleasurable or I can't possibly do this perfectly when you should be working, you can begin to break that distraction habit.
So you catch the thought and question it.
Exactly. You examine the evidence for it, look for alternative ways of thinking, and there's evidence it works. A small study, mentioned in our sources, involving just 10 college students, showed a notable decrease in both academic and general procrastination after only 5 weekly CBT sessions.
5 sessions made a difference. That's promising.
It indicates strong validity in focusing on cognitive bias and automatic thoughts as a direct pathway to reducing procrastination. So that's the thinking part. What about the doing part?
Right. How does operant conditioning fit in? That's about rewards and punishments, right?
Correct. Complementing CBT, we have operant conditioning. This is a fundamental principle in behavioral psychology focused on modifying behavior through consequences. There are 4 key parameters here, and let's think about how you could apply them directly to tackling procrastination.
Okay, the 4 types.
First, positive punishment. This involves adding something unpleasant to decrease an undesired behavior. For example, every time you catch yourself procrastinating by scrolling social media when you scheduled work time, you could immediately stand up and do 10 push-ups or squats. You're adding an unpleasant consequence to reduce the unwanted scrolling.
Make the procrastination less appealing.
Okay. Second, negative punishment. This means removing something pleasant to decrease an undesired behavior. If browsing your favorite news site is your go-to procrastination tool, you might set a rule that if you catch yourself delaying work by browsing, you immediately block that site for the rest of the hour, thereby removing a desired activity.
Take away the fun thing. Got it.
Third, positive reinforcement. This is about adding something pleasant to increase a desired behavior. This is often very powerful for building new habits. For instance, after completing a focused 30-minute work block without procrastinating, you could immediately reward yourself with something you enjoy, maybe listening to a favorite song, having a square of dark chocolate, or taking a 5-minute break to stretch. You're adding a positive stimulus to increase your focused work behavior.
Reward the good behavior. Yes.
And fourth, negative reinforcement. This one can be a bit trickier to grasp. It means removing something unpleasant to increase a desired behavior. Think of the building stress from an unstarted assignment as the unpleasant stimulus. When you finally sit down and just start it, even for 5 minutes, you experience a tiny bit of relief because you've removed the immediate discomfort of the looming task. This relief negatively reinforces the act of starting.
So starting removes the stress, making starting more likely next time.
Potentially, yes. It reinforces the doing by taking away the dreading. Now, when it comes to how often to provide these consequences, operant conditioning also outlines different reinforcement schedules.
Schedules, like reward every time.
Well, you could reward every time. That's a continuous schedule, or maybe a fixed ratio after every task, or a fixed interval after every hour of work. But there are also variable schedules where rewards are given after a random, unpredictable number of behaviors or a random amount of time.
Fixed versus random rewards. Which is better?
Interestingly, the partial reinforcement effect suggests that rewarding a behavior every single time might lead to quick extinction. The behavior stops quickly if the reward suddenly stops. However, rewarding at irregular intervals, variable schedules, tends to be more effective for building strong, long-term behavior change.
Why random? That seems odd.
Because it conditions the individual to expect an eventual reward, even if it's not immediate or predictable. Think about gambling. The unpredictable payoff keeps people hooked. Your sources suggest variable reinforcement schedules are often most useful for decreasing procrastination and building a more resilient habit of working.
Okay, so maybe reward yourself sometimes, but not every single time. Keep yourself guessing.
That's one way to think about it. And beyond these schedules, there are also specific subtypes of reinforcement to consider. Social, like praise from a friend. Token, points or stars you can save up. Tangible, actual physical gifts or treats. And activity, getting to do something fun. These categories help tailor reinforcement that genuinely motivates you.
Lots of ways to reward yourself.
Absolutely. So putting CBT and operant conditioning together forms this powerful, hypothetical model for learning against procrastination. The model, outlined in your sources, suggests a multi-stage process.
Okay, what are the stages?
First, untreated procrastination. Your starting point, the cycle is active. Second, examination of feelings, behavior, and thoughts. This is where CBT comes in. You systematically identify why you procrastinate, your triggers, thoughts, feelings, patterns.
Understand the problem.
Third, unlearning behavior. Through repeated sessions of applying operant conditioning principles, maybe using punishment for delaying or removing rewards, the procrastinating behavior is systematically weakened.
Break the old habit.
Fourth, learning alternative behavior. Once the old behavior is sufficiently weakened, healthier, productive alternatives, like starting work promptly, are reinforced, again using operant conditioning, to establish new, positive habits.
Build the new habit. Understand, weaken, replace.
That's a good summary. However, there's a crucial caution here, which your sources rightly highlight.
What's the catch?
Procrastination itself can be negatively reinforced. Remember that feeling of relief when you put off a stressful task?
Yeah, the immediate feeling.
That relief, That removal of the immediate stress can negatively reinforce the act of delaying, making you more likely to do it again next time you feel stressed by a task. It's a subtle but powerful trap that shows why careful and conscious application of these strategies is so vital.
So the relief from procrastinating actually teaches you to procrastinate more. Ouch.
It can, yes. And it's important to acknowledge the limitations of this combined CB-Toperant conditioning approach. It requires constant active participation, a significant amount of mental strength, self-awareness.
Which might be hard for someone already stuck in procrastination.
Exactly. It can feel like a major hurdle.
Ah.
It suggests that while this model provides a robust framework, more efficient solutions are still being sought. But it gives you a powerful way to understand and address the problem head-on.
Wow, we've covered so much ground today. Seriously, from the historical theories of procrastination, digging into the neuroscience, the dopamine stuff, and then right down to specific, actionable steps and this powerful combined model for change using CBT and operant conditioning.
We really did cover a lot.
It's truly eye-opening to see that procrastination isn't just some simple character flaw or a sign of laziness, is it?
Not at all.
It's this complex interplay of our thoughts, our emotions, our learned behaviors. It's about how our brains are wired, maybe seeking immediate pleasure and avoiding discomfort, and how we respond to things that feel threatening or overwhelming.
Indeed. We've explored the power of setting those SMART goals, the surprising impact of developing adaptive emotion regulation skills, really learning to sit with discomfort rather than just running from it.
That was a big one for me.
And have robust frameworks like CBT and operant conditioning can be synthesized to provide a really comprehensive strategy for change. The key, as always, though, is understanding that knowledge is most valuable when it's not just passively absorbed, but truly understood and then actively applied to your own life.
Right. Knowing isn't doing.
Exactly. There's a crucial distinction between knowing what to do and actually doing it, and our deep dive today has hopefully provided insights into both sides of that equation.
So reflecting on all this, what stands out to you from today's deep dive? Whether it's the simple yet effective power of breaking down tasks into tiny chunks, or maybe trying that intriguing dopamine hack of doing something uncomfortable first.
The cold shower approach.
Yeah. Or simply being more aware of your emotional triggers and how they push you towards delay. There are just so many avenues to explore and experiment with. And the goal is consistent progress, right? Not instant perfection.
Absolutely. And remember, the journey to overcoming procrastination, it's a process. It requires dedication, hard work, and it needs to be nurtured over time. It's about taking one small step at a time, celebrating those micro victories along the way, and never giving up.
And being kind to yourself, too.
Yes, while also practicing self-compassion and accountability. You are certainly not alone in this struggle. As we saw from those prevalence rates, many, many people are in this boat with you.
That's comforting to know.
And hopefully, with these insights and strategies from your sources, you're better equipped than ever to tackle it, to make some real changes.
Definitely feeling more equipped. So here's a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over as you go about your day. If procrastination is often about prioritizing that short-term comfort over significant long-term gain, what small, maybe slightly uncomfortable step could you take today that would yield the most profound, the most significant long-term reward for your future self?